Well, first of all, the refinement still did not become an official Scrum event, what I find a little bit disappointing. The authors of the Scrum Guide certainly have their reasons, but nevertheless, making the refinement an official Scrum event would have helped to highlight it as a crucial activity that cannot be omitted. Okay, but what are the changes? Well, in this video I want to cover just one change, but in the next one I will cover another one. This change has to do with when to do the refinement. The previous Scrum Guide did not mention a specific moment in which refinements to the product backlog should be done. However, if you read the paragraph on refinement in its context, it's easy to find out that it should be done during the whole sprint and should create sufficient ready user stories before the next sprint planning starts. And doing the refinement during the whole sprint, possibly distributed over several sessions, makes totally sense. If during the refinement questions come up that cannot be answered that easily, the product owner and developers have time to investigate or talk to the stakeholders. If you leave the refinement for the actual sprint planning, you might run into a very uncomfortable situation. The previously mentioned difficult questions or doubts might arise, and you do not have time to resolve them as you are under the time pressure of the sprint planning time box. As a result, you might start the sprint with a limited understanding of the work included and might pull an amount of work into the sprint that is not appropriate. The surprising thing now is that the new Scrum Guide explicitly mentions the fact that you might do the refinement during the sprint planning. Under topic 2, what can be done this sprint, the Scrum Guide says, through discussions with the product owner, the developers select items from the product backlog to include in the current sprint. The Scrum team may refine these items during this process, which increases understanding and confidence. And now it gets confusing and contradictory. In the chapter on the product backlog, the new Scrum Guide says product backlog items that can be done by the Scrum team within one sprint are deemed ready for selection in a sprint planning event. They usually acquire this degree of transparency after refining activities. In other words, stories should be already refined before entering the sprint planning. And there's another phrase that indicates that refinement should not be done during sprint planning. During the sprint, the product backlog is refined as needed. The second approach, doing the refinement during the whole previous sprint, is much closer to reality and will mitigate the risk of developing a poor sprint backlog. Therefore, for me, it is not really clear why the new Scrum Guide explicitly mentions the possibility of doing the refinement during the sprint planning. My recommendation for most of the cases would be not to do so. If you are looking for resources to deepen your knowledge on Agile or to prepare for Scrum exams, please visit my website. You will find posters, guides, and mock exams in the download section.